Shirley Engelmeier, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I really appreciate it.
It is a real pleasure to be with you. It was really fun talking with you in the pre-conversation. We had so much fun. None of that is actually being captured in our podcast conversation, which is a bit of a shame, but we're going to have a
Right.
really fun conversation here as we move forward as well. Where are you joining me from today?
Well, my home office is in Minneapolis, but in Minnesota we have 10,000 lakes on our license plate, but 13,000. So I'm 53 miles west at the lake.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, I'm south of Salt Lake City here in Utah right now, and we have very nice weather as well as we're kind of transitioning from summer into fall. And this is one of my favorite times of the year here.
Absolutely.
Today, we're going to be talking about a really, really important topic. It is also one of those topics that can sometimes get your blood boiling or set your hair on fire, as we were talking about in the pre-interview. We're going to be talking about building inclusive cultures to drive business success and some of the challenges around that, especially in this current sociocultural environment, and how it's been made so difficult to even have these conversations today. So as we get started,
Yeah.
I just wanted to share Shirley's bio with everyone, and then we'll jump right on in. Shirley Engelmeier, founder of Inclusion Inc., has been a pioneer in diversity, equity, and inclusion for over 25 years. Since 2001, she has guided Fortune 500 companies and emerging organizations in developing and implementing DEI initiatives that enhance employee engagement, productivity, and innovation. She's passionate and an advocate for profitability of DEI, and she addresses anti-DEI pushback with extensive research emphasizing its crucial and critical role in modern business strategy. Shirley, anything you would like to add by way of your background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
Nope, I'm good to go. Thanks.
All right. Well, let's maybe start with just a brief foundation around why this is just so important to the modern workplace from a business case perspective. And then we'll dive on
Sure.
into kind of the human case, as well as just why there's so much, pushback on DEI conversations and what we can do about it.
Yeah, thanks. So let me start by saying the entire time that I've done this work, I've always focused on inclusion as a business strategy. Even before I formed Inclusion Inc. and I was doing this work with someone else, I led as a white woman from Minnesota, Denny's consent decree, race relations. And in that place, I realized that there are systems and processes at in that case, a restaurant level that would impact this. And so all along, we've been saying, hey, inclusion's a business strategy. It drives innovation, part of your focus in your work that you do. It drives engagement. It makes people more likely to stay and it drives productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, and I'll give you a broad piece, and then I want to dig down and identify what the different meaning of the words are. We all kind of refer to it as D, E, and I. I personally don't like that. In From when I started this work, and we get to leaders and we go, "Hey, this is about your business.
Mm-hmm.
This is about attracting the best talent. It's about keeping the best talent. And oh, by the way, in a huge way, it's about selling more goods and services to customers or clients." So, somewhere in the noise of not even the current, but throughout time, uh, it just got very muddled. And it particularly got muddled uh, what I call the global awakening and the murder of George Floyd. So here you
Yeah.
have leaders. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid of I and D or D and I, and now I'm supposed to know what DEI is. So you asked me any questions on that before I give you like how I think we need to approach this, and then we could get in maybe into some of the current pushback, which really isn't pushback, it's orchestrated.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're right. The the movement towards diversity, equity, inclusion, some people add belonging on there. Some people call it the Jedi model or the Eddie model. There's different ways that people refer to it. It goes back a long time though, and um, before DEI, people just talked about diversity or maybe just inclusion or whatever, right? So whatever
Right,
terms we label this with, it's been part of the conversation for a long time, but it really hit the general public consciousness with the murder of George Floyd. And there really became that public outcry, and there became kind of this expectation, particularly among the younger workforce, that they expected their employers to speak out. Like they expected public statements. And so all of
yes,
a sudden, if a company didn't have like that chief diversity officer, or if they didn't have some sort of public facing person or at least a statement to respond, they took like a real public PR hit in
right,
in the marketplace, right? And so all of a sudden, if they didn't have something, everyone started putting something out there, right? And so there really became this huge, if there wasn't something already, there was this huge increased public awareness during that time, which many DVI proponents became very um excited about, but as we often see, when the pendulum swings one direction, oftentimes there tends to be a backlash amongst
mhm,
people who don't like that swing, right? And that's what we've also seen is a systematic um, response, I think, to what happened during the time of the George Floyd murder and the aftermath of that. So I think that really gets us into this anti-DEI pushback, the systematic approach that we've now been seeing in the last couple of years in places like Florida, Texas, Utah, and in other parts of the country. Yeah, let's get into it. What are you
yeah.
seeing?
So I'm going to frame up the definitions because I think it's important to have a basis for what they mean. And when we talk about this, I think I personally have facilitated to over 22,000 leaders since that time of murder of George Floyd. It really helped leaders get it when we said, look, you have to start with a culture of inclusion. Let's start with the I. Everybody knows what it feels like to be excluded.
Yeah.
So you go, oh, and why are you doing that? You're not doing that because you're trying to be nice to John or Shirley. You're doing it because you don't know what great innovation ideas you're going to have. So we start with the I. We actually put it in a little equation. We add the dimensions of difference that there are. Yes, it's race, ethnicity. Yes, it's sex. It's how you think. It's where you live. That goes on and on. And the one thing that I always say about the D is we're going to have unconscious bias about it.
Hmm.
So if we breathe, which we both are, we have bias. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you do those two things, equity will be the result. That helps us not have to have an academic discussion on equity because leaders just want to get stuff done. And the feeling of being in a culture of inclusion and recognizing that people do have differences is belonging. So I just want to use that as a frame. It's important to lift that up as we start to get into what the heck is happening now. And I'll tell you my own. I really suffered the illusion, John, that finally companies get it. If you talk about creating a culture of inclusion, the door is finally opened with the murder of George Floyd and the global awakening. And then I remember in 2022, it smacked me upside the head when in Florida, within 30 days,
Hmm.
they passed two bills. They were
Yeah.
dubbed, don't say gay and anti woke. And
Hmm.
I kind of scratched my head and said, well, how did that happen? And then fast forward to, some clients were saying, well, what's the impact of the SCOTUS ruling? I said, we haven't really seen it. Then fast forward to, I remember the date exactly, January 24th of this year. And I opened up an article as I do my scanning. And Nicholas Confessori, New York Times reporter, had done a Freedom of Information Act trying to get back to how did these things happen? Now, his focus is specifically on the Claremont Institute. The players are much bigger than that, which I'll get back to. His was the Claremont Institute. At the same time, I thought, oh, this is the most profound change work we've ever done. Leaders really didn't know. If you start with inclusion, they get it. And then I realized the entire time we were working on that, they were doing this strategic disinformation campaign. They decided behind the scenes that you should go after white men as being discriminated against. Some really crazy things like the Constitution is only for Christian white people. And then you wind up with, oh my gosh, that started the same time. Then you wind up with legislation in Florida, Texas, Utah, where you are, because the Claremont Institute said, here's the legislation, just go implement it. So the first point I want to make to people is this is not real. It's fabricated. It's the function of a very well-financed strategic campaign from what I would call a fringe group of people trying to, pass their way of thinking. I believe I kindly call them ideologues and ideology. And in fact, that Nick Confessori article, it pretty much lit my hair on fire. And I go, oh my gosh, I have to write a white paper on this. And I kept researching and researching. And then I go, I have to write a book on this. I have to lift this up so that I can show what's the source of it, how it's ill-defined, which we can explore, because it's not defined the way I defined it.
Yeah.
It's like fabrication of things to make everybody afraid and for corporations and universities to power in the face of this. So you tell me
Yes.
where we want to go, because I get pretty lit up about this.
Yeah, let's talk about how they're doing this, setting up the
Sure.
conditions for people to cower. I like how you just said that. It's really fear-based, right? And it's
Yes.
tapping into people's fear, and it's tapping into, I mean, I don't know. You correct me if I'm wrong, but my perception is it's tapping into largely uneducated populace's perception, of largely straight white men, cisgender straight white men, largely not particularly educated, who are feeling disenfranchised and are feeling reverse discrimination, as they would put it, right? And they're feeling like disadvantaged, or like they're feeling, I would say they're feeling that their privilege that they're used to has been decreased over time. Is that fair? Do you feel like
So
that's accurate?
so let me start with what I think is the most astounding things, and I'll try to mention different groups as I go, as I lift it up. It's the highly affluent, already achieved their position in life, high influence, mostly uber wealthy white men who are the drivers behind almost all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get what you're saying, because you might say, well, hey, what about me? And an uneducated, it's quite the opposite, which is also makes it so hard to swallow. So if I think there are some premises. So the first thing is, look, do I think white men have been discriminated against? Sure. But that's not what the overall data pattern is. If you look at McKenzie and Lean In, and they've been doing this since 2014, there hasn't been a change in this very first rung of the ladder. And this is important, I think, again, for us to align on. It's not the glass ceiling for women and people of color. It's the first rung of the ladder. I don't think people wake up in the morning and go, I think I'm going to promote more white men than I am. But yet they get promoted at the very, very first rung by an 8% higher than white women and women of color. So if we look at what's their fear, gosh, I have had so many sleepless nights about trying to understand when you're operating from that level of wealth position, what your problem is that you're going after this. The players are everything from Claremont, which I think you've experienced there at the university in Utah. And why wouldn't somebody want to just take legislation and put it in? It's also, when I was finishing the book, it's the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. 4 of their 6 core tenets are anti-DEI. They're obsessed with gender identity. They're obsessed with the term white privilege, which typically we don't use in what we do. We talk about how this is a driver for your business, and within an university setting, how you're going to get the best students and prepare them for what really lies out there. You have Stephen Miller, who started a 501c3, don't ask me how that happened, to go after any program that looked like it was excluding white men. Now, we know that this is not about, let me just put this out there loud and clear. This is not about hiring unqualified people. It's not about promoting unqualified people. It's simply saying the pool of talent that's out there right now doesn't only look like my husband, who's white man, and my 2 sons that are white men. You just can't achieve the goals that you need to. And also, you don't look at somebody like me and say, how do you sell, when I was at Frito-Lay, how do you sell chips to Latinos or Latinx? Don't ask me. Don't ask me on Gen X. The part that's the most heinous is the level of disinformation. So I feel like I'm playing a game of whack-a-mole. Every week, it seems that there's some new thing. Remember CRT? That was all led by Christopher Rufo. He's out of the Manhattan Institute. Oh, guess what? That went its way. So now he's an anti-DEI guy. A 35-year-old man whose last name is Starbuck, not to be confused with coffee, has gone after Tractor Supply, John Deere, Harley, Jack Daniels. And just, I have this in front of me and I want to read it just so I really am not making this up. How he positioned DEI to, however you do this to create fear, is that Harley Davidson money has promoted sex change procedures on children, anti-racism efforts against whiteness, and efforts against Christian privilege. If that's really what it stood for, I too might be upset. Except that is the level of disinformation or no information. For the research I did for the book and continue to do, I have never once found a definition of woke. But it's anti-woke. And that seems to cause the crazy response. So my mission with my new book that I came out with, I shared this with you ahead of time. This is a scary cover. And we want it to be a scary cover. For those of you listening, it's black with really, you know, uh, letters that really pop out. It's, unraveling the anti-DEI ideology. Wait, stop, time out, enough. And getting back to why DEI matters.
I think a book like this is super necessary at this point in time. Getting past ideologies is super important. Like as a university professor, and universities are often under attack for, indoctrinating the younger generations is kind of an attack or an argument that often gets made or that I hear here in Utah, for example. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Like I'm all against ideologies. Like across the board, I am not a fan of ideologies. I want people to be critical thinkers. I want students to be critical thinkers. I want to prepare critical thinkers to go into the world and to challenge ideas and to push back on structures and systems and, to not just take what people say at face value, but to really challenge it, right? And so, regardless of the ideology, I think it's healthy for us to challenge it and to push back. And certainly, these types of anti woke ideologies or this anti DEI ideology is something that we need to challenge, and it's something that can be really damaging. So I applaud you for the work here. I applaud you for the book, and I too believe like we need to retake the efforts towards diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, whatever words you want to throw out there, however you want to frame it. This is important work. It's important work because the business case is so strong for this. The human case is so strong for this. We all
Right.
want to work in a safe, inclusive environment where we can all bring our true, authentic self to the workplace, where we can feel safe, where we can contribute in meaningful ways. We all want that. Nobody wants to go
Right.
to a workplace where we don't feel safe, where we can't contribute. And so let's reclaim, the opportunity to talk about these issues and to create those types of safe environments. That's my hope. And I wish, we can I wish we were in an environment today where that could happen, but it's really tricky. And I hope everyone who's listening or watching today will be bold enough to have these conversations in your workplaces.
Yeah, thank you. On the book, I felt possessed to write it. I just every morning I'd wake up and a download would come through. And I really think organizations, universities, they need to get the courage to tell the truth about what they're doing. You're
Yeah.
doing this, you want inclusion so you can drive your best ideas. You're getting a group of people to work there and promote within your organization because, hello, those that have the most diverse executive teams, and I'm on the D, outperform their peers by
Mhm.
39%, McKenzie.
Yeah.
So we're, as in the work that we're doing now, we're encouraging companies, please do not cower. Say you're going to sell all the growth in the US is from multi-ethnic, multiracial people. 30% of the growth by 2026. They all want a piece of that. But yet there's something about the fringe attack that they fold. They fold even before they're maybe even attacked. And that happened, I think, with Jack Daniels or the last one that came through. So it's very heavy lifting and it's going to negatively impact business. It's going to negatively impact people wanting to contribute. It's huge.
Yeah. Like you said, do not cower. Let's be bold. Let's be brave, courageous, it's important. We got to carry it forward. We got, in my case, I want to be an ally. I want to be courageous, use the privilege that I do have in support of others who may not have that same privilege. I appreciate it, Shirley. Thank you so much. I note the
Thank
time.
you.
We've been having a super fun conversation. I need to let you go and get on with your busy day. Before we wrap things up, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book,
Sure.
and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah. So you can find us at inclusioninc.com. Love to share with you the approaches that we're using in general that make sense to business. We also started a Stop Anti DEI .com, which takes you back to our website. And the book is available in ebook only on Amazon for $8.99. My big thing to people is this is not an organic pushback. It is a highly orchestrated, well-funded result of ideology that's trying to shape the narrative to close these programs down. So thank you so much, John.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I encourage my audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Shirley can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great